Hey y'all, today I'm going to be making the Pollies Purse Plus from Sophisticated Craft Designs. So thank you to Sophisticated Craft Designs for allowing me to make a tutorial video of your gorgeous pattern. If you haven't checked out their page, they have so many cute bags, but this is probably my favorite. I am making the plus size version of it. Whenever you buy the pattern, you get two different sizes. You get the plus and the regular. The regular, I believe, has 5 card slots, and the plus has 7. But the plus is just a little bit bigger, and it fits my phone better, so it's my favorite size to make. And I do make it as a wristlet with a D-ring and a small wrist strap. And I just think it's the perfect size. It's plenty big enough to put any cards that you need, and then has 2 zip pockets and then the flap with all the card slots. And it also has a slip pocket with a snap closure on the outside. Okay, so obviously I went ahead and did my zippers there. I find it really easy just to line them up and slip them on. You don't really need the tool, the zipper jig. I'm sure they're pretty helpful, but I don't really have a problem just doing them on my own like that. Just make sure that you do use a lighter to singe those edges because you want to melt it so that they don't fray. But also doing that before you try to put your zipper pull on will help, I think, make it a bit easier to kind of wiggle it on, because whenever you melt those edges, it gets a little stiffer because it kind of melts the plastic or whatever it's made out of, and kind of makes it a little firmer so that it's easier to pull through. So we're making the strap here, and I actually had to film this 3 times because 2 separate times I did the entire thing and then realized that I forgot to put the clasp on. So I actually had to go cut out a whole new one because I just tore it apart too many times. So fold it in half first, and I'm using double-sided tape from Waywack or Wawack or whatever it's called. And I'm using the leather one that is super strong. My machine doesn't have a problem with it, but you know, if yours doesn't generally like double-sided tape, you probably don't want that one. It's pretty sticky. So you want to fold it in half and then fold it in half again and slide your little 1/2-inch lobster clasp, I think is what it's called. You slide that on there and then open up the edges there like I did, and sew across that, and that's going to give you one continuous loop, so you don't have any raw edges in this strap. Okay, so I spend quite a bit of time on this process to try to get it as even as possible. I want to flatten that out really well because I am using vinyl. This is, I think it's the promo vinyl. I don't remember the color. It could just be yellow. From My Punk Broderie. If you haven't tried their promo vinyl, it is fantastic, and I love the price of it too. But I'm spending quite a bit of time here to really kind of line everything up and get it all flattened out and pressed together. And you can see I got those seams pretty well lined up. And I'm just going to clip it on. And then as soon as I'm folding it in half to make it that 1/2 inch, and seal in all of those raw edges. And once I get all the clips on, I'll sew down both sides to secure it. And I mean, you could just sew down the one side, but I like to sew down both sides because I think it looks neater. I think it's if you only do the one side, it looks unfinished to me, but that is my opinion. Technically, you could just sew the open edges together and be done. Okay, so I'm just going to take it over to my machine, and by the way, I have a Juki DU1181N. Oh, I am going to flatten them. These pliers are just a pair of, I actually think that they're for glass breaking, for like stained glass and stuff, but more recently people use them for key fob hardware that you would make a keychain with. But they work really nice at really smushing down thick layers. If you have a domestic, you really need to have some of these in your arsenal, because it helps with those bulky seams. I just recently upgraded to this machine. I'm still actually getting used to it, and you'll kind of see some learning curves in the video, I think. Yeah, I think that they're super handy to have, and they're not very expensive. I got mine on Amazon, so pretty accessible, pretty cheap, but definitely worth it to help you get through some of those thicker layers, because it really does flatten it, especially if you have, like I said, a domestic machine. Your presser foot probably doesn't lift very high, so that makes it a lot easier whenever you can flatten it down a little bit, those bulky seams down a little bit, so that you can get it under the presser foot a little bit easier. And I have used the promo vinyl on a domestic. I had just like a little $200 Brother machine, and the promo vinyl sewed really well on that. So if you have a domestic, you might try it. I don't know that I would recommend making a strap like this on a domestic with solid vinyl, because that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of vinyl. But you could definitely make this same strap out of just some interface cotton woven, or some cotton lycra, anything like that. Just make sure you interface it so that it doesn't like stretch on you, but you could definitely make this whole bag on a domestic. I have made plenty of them on a domestic. I've never made a solid vinyl one on a domestic. Or have I? I don't think I have. I think I had kind of one with a mix. It had like the outer shell was vinyl, but some of the accents and stuff were cotton woven to kind of cut down on those seams, the thickness of the seams. Alright, so just going to do the other side, and both times I have started and stopped at the seam where those two ends came together, and I just kind of slide that hook out of my way so that I can go a little bit faster on the second side. And I'm not pulling the threads through to the back side and tying them off. I did just back stitch. I'm not too worried about the way that it looks with the back stitch, because we're just gonna fold it and then put a rivet through anyways, so I'm not too concerned. I think it looks really good. Also, sorry, I do go off screen a little bit. This is my first sewing tutorial video, so hopefully as I do more and more of them, I will learn where the camera is and not go off screen so much. But I do try, and I think in the latter half of the video, my kind of I line up a little bit better. So. Okay, so I'm just using just a leather hole punch tool. I want to say I got it at Hobby Lobby, but you know, you can get them on Amazon, any of those places. I actually kind of prefer to use that over my big rivet press. I feel like I have more control, plus then that way I don't have to switch out my hole punch and my rivet dies that go on there, and because that's just a pain. So I'm just going to put the rivet through. I'm not actually going to press it right now because I don't want to get my machine, the big rivet press out until I have more to do. So I'm just going to push it on and set it to the side. But you can see how that double stitching and then that rivet, it just gives a really nice look to the little strap there. Now we're just going to make the D-ring. So I think I already folded this one in half, but it's basically you make it the exact same way as the strap did. You take your fabric, you fold it in half, and then fold it in half again and stitch down both sides. And I just burn the edges of the thread just to kind of melt them down. I am using a bonded polyester, I believe. I think it's an Amann thread from, again, Wewak, or however you say it. I don't know. So many people say it different ways. Anyways, so we don't need this piece right now. We're not going to sew anything else. So I'm just going to clip it and set it off to the side. Now we'll move on to the zippers. This is a shorter one, and it's going to be the zipper that is on the front side, or I guess it's actually the back side. The back side of the pouch, the opposite of the card slots. So with this one, you're actually going to put zipper tabs on both ends. So you don't have to do it the way I've done it, but I decided to cut 2 of my front fabric and 2 of my lining fabric just to kind of, you know, keep it continuous on the inside. Not that anyone is ever going to inspect my zipper tabs on the inside, but so I like to do as much as possible at once. So I try to do both ends and both sides at the same time. If you are worried about lining things up, just do it one at a time, baste it on, and then put the other side on and stitch it at the stitch length or the stitch, no, seam allowance. That's the word I'm looking for. The seam allowance suggested in the pattern. Okay, and so what I like to do here is just kind of like fold my other end right up to the presser foot so that I can just do a chain stitch and just keep going. And then I'm also going to grab my longer zipper, and I actually like to pull my zipper in the direction that I want it to go to make sure 100% that I'm putting it in the right way, because I put them in backwards so many times that this is just kind of like my method now to actually pull it in the direction I want just to make sure that it is closing the right way. And this one is not getting a 2-piece zipper tab. It's just getting a little zipper end. And so right there I realized that I cut the pattern piece out of the wrong fabric, and I could have left it. It probably would have looked cute, but I wanted it to be the same as the other one. So I just ran upstairs real quick and cut a different piece of fabric, or this is my vinyl actually, and I'm just going to stitch that on. And I like to do it this way because this way I got all of my joining, I guess you could call it, stitches where I'm using a 3.5 or a 3 stitch length. I got all of that done at once, so I don't have to change the stitch length like after every single one, because now I need to top stitch, and I usually use a 4.5 to top stitch. So now I can change my machine to a 4.5 and fold all of these and just top stitch all at once. I think it saves time, but again, if that is too much for you to do it all at once, just take your time. Alright, so now we're going to top stitch these, and I'm going to do the same thing I did whenever I was joining them. I'm going to pull that other end around and top stitch right on top of that one, and then I will grab the longer zipper that is your top zipper, and I'll show you how it's supposed to be folded up. And you can mark these. I believe the pattern actually states to mark them. You would just like cut it, or you would not cut it. Don't cut it, please. You would mark it in half and just draw a line down the center, and then fold both ends into the center, and because you're just kind of creating like a little cap around the end of your zipper. But I don't fold it, I just kind of go for it. And you can see on the end there, it's a little crooked. Well, maybe you can't see very well, but I'm just kind of eyeballing it until I like the way it looks, and then I'll clip it down and top stitch. Okay, so we're done with the zippers for now. We can put them to the side. This is actually a step that's later on in the whole process, but I like to kind of get all of this prep work out of the way. So I am taking my clear ID sleeve, and I'm just taking some waterproof canvas, and I've put double-sided tape on it so that it makes this process super easy. Highly recommend if your machine can handle it. And do always keep a little alcohol wipe beside you. You know, you can get those, I buy them at Costco, but you can get them at probably the dollar store. But just keep them beside in your cart or whatever basket that you keep beside you when you're sewing. And just wipe your needle down if it gets gummy. Mine doesn't. I don't know how I got, lucky on that, but mine doesn't really get too gummy. So, yeah, so just use the double-sided tape, stick it about halfway, and then fold it over, and it makes it so easy to just top stitch down that now. I wasn't super happy with the tension here, so I loosened it up. It wasn't bad enough for me to redo it, but I definitely needed to loosen the tension up a bit. It was too tight. And I believe this is 12 gauge clear vinyl. I think that's what the pattern suggests, but okay, so we're moving on to the zippered pocket. And so you want to take your shorter zipper with the two zipper tabs, the zipper ends. And mine is a little bit long. Sometimes I don't follow the seam allowances perfectly. That's fine, just kind of edit it. And I am using a number 5 zipper for both. The directions in the pattern will tell you what size seam allowance to use for a number 5 and what size to use for a number 3. But if you're using a number 5, I usually just kind of stick to the same seam allowance and then I trim it down. You'll see later my panel will be a little bit longer, but it's fine. I haven't ever had a problem with it. And you can just go ahead and baste that on with a kind of a skinny seam allowance and then come back and do the lining piece. But like I said before, I like to do as much as I can in one step, so I go ahead and put both on together and fight with my zipper apparently. I know it looks like in this video that my nails are very close to going underneath my presser foot, but I think it must just be the angle because they're not in danger. Although I have sewn over my nail before, but that was whenever I first got this machine and was very glad I had nails on. I don't know what happened there. My bobbin must have had like a weird loop in it or something, and so I'm just pulling that out and trying again. Strings drive me crazy. You'll probably notice that I like to cut them off even before I'm done sewing sometimes. And there is a trash can that is right beside me, so I usually just brush them off to the left-hand side. Alright, so on this one, right here, you want to fold the lining to the back, and you're going to top stitch over both of them. actually I did sew it, and then I had to rip it out because I did it wrong, but I cut that part out so you guys didn't have to watch me ripping stitches. But on this part here, you want to fold it to the back, and you're going to top stitch through both the lining and the front piece. So just kind of mash it down. I'm using vinyl and waterproof canvas, so it's not super easy to iron for me. You can iron both of these items, but you need to make sure that you are ironing from the top of the waterproof canvas and that your vinyl is not touched by the iron at all. If I ever need to interface vinyl, I like to use a washcloth and a whole lot of steam, and just kind of just steam it really, really well, and then do a couple passes with the iron over the washcloth. And that seems to work pretty well. I can get like Decaville, either heavy or light, to stick to my vinyl that way for the most part. But just make sure you don't leave the iron on your vinyl for too long, or your waterproof canvas for that matter, because it can melt it. So just make sure you're just doing mostly steam and a light pass with the iron. So now I'm just putting the top of that panel on. This is what's going to make it the same size as the rest of the bag. It's going to be the top, I don't know what it's called, top. No, not, I was going to say placket, but that's not the right word. It's just the top piece of your panel here. And this does not have a lining piece to go on the back. So this is just a piece of vinyl, and then we're actually going to put this on top of a lining piece in a moment. And I'm just using my fingernail there to find the teeth of the zipper. With a vinyl, sometimes it can be hard to actually feel or see through there. So I like to just run my nail along it, and then that's kind of where I know to prep my presser foot. But I'm not using a zipper foot, so I can't get quite as close as a zipper foot would. I just like using my regular walking foot. I do have a zipper foot. I have never put it on my machine, but I just like to stick to the walking foot because I really don't want to have to switch it out in the middle of my sewing flow, you know? So, and again, that means my panel will be a little bit longer. You're going to see more of my zipper and less of my vinyl, but I'm okay with that. So you're just going to fold it up, and you want to make sure that you're pressing that seam allowance towards the top of that piece B, I think it is. Or is it? Okay, so here's the lining piece I was talking about. You're gonna lay that face up, and then you're going to lay this whole panel that you just made on top of that, but also face up. And you wanna make sure, like I said, that seam allowance is pressed towards the top, that flat edge. So I am going to clip the edge there to help keep that up. And then I'm going to use the, what do you call them? The hair clips, alligator clips maybe, they're called. So that's just gonna allow me to have a little bit more reach so that I can get all the way down in there and make sure that the seam allowance is still pointing up towards the you do want to clip all the way around because we are actually going to baste this entire thing together. You're going to start on the right edge at the top. You're going to go down the length of that piece B, and then you're going to turn and top stitch over the zipper area just to close that in. That's why we didn't need a lining piece, because it's going to be closed off right there and no one's going to see it, so we didn't need to line it. But then you're going to, after you do that, you're going to go all the way around. And actually another mistake I made was I did all of this and forgot to put my label on, so I am actually going to have to unpick the basting that I did around the bottom edge and stick my label on, sew it together, and then put this back together. There's probably other places I could have put my label that wouldn't have required me to rip out my stitches, but I didn't want to put it anywhere else. I wanted it right there. So, and I only needed to rip out basting stitches over that bottom half, so it wasn't too bad. So this is what I was talking about here. We're just going to baste over, top stitch over that zipper area. And that's just going to give it a really nice clean finish, and then that way the zipper, when you're actually using the zipper tab, the little slider part will not get caught in the fabric underneath because it's been stitched back. That's why designers have you do that, top stitch like that, so that it doesn't get caught. So just another reminder before you do this part right here, if you want to put your logo on, now's the time to do that. So you can see that my panel was just a little bit longer, like I was saying, because of my seam allowance around my zipper. So this one isn't too bad. Also, my linings, usually I don't cut them perfect. I kind of like trace around the pattern, and I'm not super worried about, you know, doing a perfect edge or anything on the linings. It's all in a seam allowance anyways, usually, so I'm okay if it's not perfectly lined up. We're human, we're not a machine. And right here is where I realized I didn't put my logo. So I was going to try to put it off to the side a little bit so that I didn't have to rip out as much stitches, but I really didn't like it there. I wanted it in the middle, and so we're just gonna make that happen. And I think I did it about an inch and a half from the bottom, maybe an inch and a quarter, I don't know. And I had my logos custom made from a seller on Etsy, and I will actually link the seller down below. He is fantastic. He was so easy to work with. I had my labels in a week, including shipping time, and they came from across the country. He did fantastic work. He was very responsive. I just sent in my logo, and he sent me a couple sample photos, and just had them in the mail the next day. And I do pull through the threads from the front down to the back side, because on the logo I didn't want to backstitch, and I just think it's a much cleaner look. It's kind of a pain, but I think it gives it a much cleaner look for your logo, so not too much work, just a kind of a pain, but worth it for a nice finish. So I just double knot it, and then pull it pretty tight, and then just use the lighter to kind of seal off those ends. Alright, so now we're back where we started. I just need to stitch around the bottom again to close that back up, and our panel here will be done. Sorry about the shaking. My iPad is attached to the, what do you call it, the mount for my phone. And I'm reading the instructions, the directions off of my iPad, so sometimes if I touch it, it kind of shakes a little, so sorry about that. So now we're going to put the top zipper on, and this is going to be the zipper that opens up to the main compartment of the little handbag. So in the directions it will tell you what to mark, because you're not going to take this all the way to the edges. So just, you know, in your pattern it'll tell you what to mark here, and that's going to be where you line up your zipper ends. And I do a little bit different than the pattern directions. It's going to have the same results, I just get to it a different way with the zipper. And I cannot remember is it the Butler method? No, I don't remember. But it's a specific method where you fold your zipper down at a 90-degree angle on the ends. You could do 2 zipper tabs if you want, but this is going to allow you to open it up wider. So in the directions it'll tell you to stitch it on and then stop, fold it, and then stitch over that. But what I'm going to do here is just kind of like find my mark and fold it down, and then I'm going to use the lighter and I'm going to melt it to each other so that it stays in place. But do whichever way is easier for you. Please be careful if you're going to do it this way, because it does get hot. It is melted fabric basically, and you'll see I actually got pretty hot on on the second one I did. My finger kind of burned a little bit, so just be careful if you're going to do it this way. You can use what are those, forceps? If you want, you can use that to hold it in place, but I just use a clip, and it was a little too long here, so I'm folding it down a little further. I'm not great at this method, but it does work better for me than other methods, so I'm sticking with it. I'll get better with time. It's still kind of new to me. I've actually only been making handbags since the end of last year. I've been sewing clothing and quilts and things like that since I was 10, probably even earlier than that, but on my mom's old Singer that was inside of a desk, you know. But handbags are truly my passion now, so but I am still new to all the different methods and ways of doing things. So I'm just getting it pretty hot, and you can actually see the texture and color of the zipper tape fabric. I don't know, is it nylon maybe? I'm not sure what they're made of. But anyways, you can kind of see it change colors as you're heating it, and it also will shrink a little as it gets super hot, and then that's when I pull the flame away and I press down. But again, like I said, please be careful when you're doing this. You know, if you have tender fingers, definitely don't do this. Or use the side of your lighter and press that against it instead of your fingers. That's another way you could do it to keep your fingers out of it, but I have some pretty tough fingers, so I don't know how many times I just said fingers in that sentence, but I don't know if it'll show on camera the color change, but it does have a slight color change, and then you can just press it on there. That one got pretty hot. My little finger was a little sore after that. So you can see how I now have that kind of T shape to my zipper, and they're both kind of going off in 90-degree angles from the thing. So now we'll be able to like secure that into the seam and then trim off that excess later. So it's actually a really cool way of doing a zipper, and it keeps that bulk of that zipper out of your side seams when you go to sew everything together. I really like it. It will leave a tiny hole, opening, not a hole, but an opening, in your bag, just the tiniest little opening, but it doesn't compromise, you know, the security of your handbag or anything. Nothing's gonna fall out of there. I can barely get my like fingernail through there to poke out the zipper tab on the end. So this is the lining for the inside of the bag. I believe these are C1 is a piece. I don't know, it's too small for me to see. I'm just watching on my computer and it's a pretty small screen. But I believe it's C1. You have two pieces of that. It's just the inside pocket is just a straight pocket. It's it doesn't have any card slots or any slip pockets or zip pockets. But you could probably add some card slots inside if you wanted to. But I like just the big open pocket. I think it, you know, you're not going to be carrying much in this anyways. I like to use it to go to the grocery store because that way I can put my phone in it and my cards, and that's all I need. You know, I attach my keys onto my key ring, the strap, and then I'm pretty hands-free. Again, I'm using my nails to kind of feel for the zipper. That way I know I'm not, you know, going over the zipper pull, or, you know, just so that I'm keeping it lined up. You can see that I'm just gonna, I'll trim off that excess zipper that we don't need. And I am going to burn that, or melt it with the lighter, because the zipper can fray. So I like to just make sure to always melt that down. So this is the part where you want to keep your lining out of the way whenever you top stitch. So this is what I was messed up on in that first zipper, where I just top stitched that part. But you do want to keep the lining out of the way. It's going to make it so much easier for you to finish it in the end. And the method that is actually used to finish it requires you to do it this way. So yeah, so you're just gonna, you want to fold the seam allowance down towards the vinyl part, which is the flowery part, and but also keep your lining, sorry, I had a little brain fart there, your lining out of your top stitching here. Okay, so now we are pretty much just going to repeat that whole process to put the other lining piece and the other front piece onto the other side of the zipper. So pretty much the exact same process. We'll put the yellow vinyl front, and this is where I realized I didn't have that piece. We'll put that yellow lining or the yellow vinyl on, and then put the striped waterproof canvas lining on and sew across, and then top stitch. A helpful tip, if you're not used to, sandwiching that whole piece together, you can leave the back clips on and just clip between them and then pull them out and add them to the front. That way you're making sure that your first piece that you clipped on stays where it's meant to, and you're also getting the top piece on correctly. Okay, so we're done with that piece for now. We're gonna start working, I believe, on the card slots. Okay, so in the pattern, you're gonna need to cut 7 of these pieces out. These are gonna be our card slots. I'm just gonna fold them in half and stitch down that short edge. Fold them in half, wrong sides together. We're gonna open it up and press them later. So the directions will tell you the seam allowance and everything that you need to use. You can see I was just checking and I did the wrong one. So I'm just gonna chain stitch these. I'm gonna go through them. I did leave it at, I left this whole video at regular speed. I don't know, it's kind of long. I might speed it up in the future, but this is my first one. Like I said, you guys can give me some feedback on, you know, the length, whether you'd like me to cut certain things out, speed things up. I am doing a voiceover for it because my sewing machine is actually in my living room and it's not a quiet place. We usually have music or TV, and then I have the dog, and but if you guys would rather have me talking just, you know, as it goes on, or, you know, live or however, just let me know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm open to suggestions, nice ones. You don't have to be rude about it. Just, but anything you guys would want to see differently. The camera angle. I will not be putting my face on camera because I probably make funny faces when I'm sewing or something. I tend to stick my tongue out whenever I'm concentrating, but that's just not what I'm interested in. You guys are here to watch the sewing, not looking. Alright, so last one. So what I'm going to do now is go off screen, or actually I'm going to flip them all right side out, and then I'm going to go off screen and iron them again. Like I said before, this is waterproof canvas, so do not hold your iron on it too long, and I do use a washcloth over the top of it and use lots and lots of steam to just kind of give these a little bit of a press. I like to make sure I flatten out that seam. I don't push it to one side or the other. I like to split it open and flatten it, just to reduce on the bulk. Waterproof canvas is kind of a thick material to be using for card slots, but I really, really love it. It doesn't fray, and it just holds up really well. So I think it works, but if you're on a domestic machine, do not use waterproof canvas for it because it's going to be way too thick for you to stitch through all 7 of those. So you would want to use like a cotton woven with maybe like SF101 or SF101 is really the only one I've ever used, but I think like Sewfuse or something like that I think is similar to it, and that's what a lot of the pros recommend. But you definitely want to use a cotton woven for a domestic machine. Okay, so you can see I didn't put it right in the middle, I put it down towards the bottom more. So now I'm just going to top stitch across the top edge. You don't have to do this, but I actually really prefer to have the top stitching across the top. I just feel like it gives like a stiffer feel to the card slot pocket, but in the directions I believe it actually says you don't have to do that. You can see here my tension was off, so I'm going to pull that out and just kind of rip that out real quick and change my tension. I think I already changed my tension, but I'm just going to pull that out. You can see I could easily pull that straight out, so you can definitely tell. So with my machine, and it's probably true with all machines, but it's just what I've learned recently when I was setting this one up. But if you have like your thread on top is just kind of like sitting there with little loops around it, that means that your tension is too tight. If you have that ugly nest of threads on the bottom because there's loops and stuff on the bottom, that means your thread is not tight, or your tension is not tight enough. That's probably common knowledge for most people, but it was new to me. So I usually work with all cotton, and in sewing, so I never really had to mess with my tension. It was usually just always right. So I never had to change it up. But now that I'm starting to work with fabrics that are different textures and different thicknesses, and I'm all these card slots and stuff, I'm having to learn how to play with tension a little bit more. So and here the bobbin got me, so I'll just need to trim that off, and luckily it got all the way through that one there before it ran out. So I'll just have to change out my bobbin and do those other three. So you can actually see I'm struggling with it, changing out my bobbin. I was still getting used to it in the machine. I've never had one of these bobbins that go in the bottom, like underneath like that. And even my brother, when it was just a drop-in bobbin. So this kind of style is new to me, but I think I had my presser foot or my needle position in the wrong position to be able to get it out. So, just gotta trial and error it. All right, now we're back in business and we can get those other three top stitched. Okay, so in the pattern, you'll get this piece F, and you're going to use that piece to draw out where you need to line up your card slots. It makes it super easy. I'm just using a chalk marker. I'm going to do it on each edge. You won't be able to see it probably because it's white on yellow, but I can see it. And I did not think about the fact that this was going to look like a taxi cab whenever I was planning out my bag. I just really, everyone showed a lot of interest in how I did that checkerboard look in my first one that I forgot to hit record on. So I wanted to make sure that I did it in this one too, so I could show you guys how I did it. So I'll kind of explain a little bit while I'm kind of attaching these. What I did was I have the striped fabric and I cut them probably 1/4 of an inch bigger than the pattern suggested for the pattern piece or whatever. Just so I had a little bit of wiggle room so that I could line them up the way I wanted them. And I cut 4 with black, I think, ending in the black, and 4 with ending in the white stripe. That way I could get that checkerboard effect. So, no, I'm sorry, I cut 4 with a black edge and 3 with a white edge. Because there's only 7, not 8. So you just line it up with your the marks that you just made using that piece F, and stitch it on along the bottom. And because we made that kind of tube and then flattened it out, it's going to have no raw edges that you need to worry about. We had a little nesting in the back. Sometimes I forget to hold the strings, or the threads, whenever I first do my first stitch, and it can kind of like pull it up underneath. If that happens, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I mean, as long as it's not something that you're going to see the bobbin stitches on, you know, you can just leave it. I try to hold it just so it doesn't like get sucked up in there and, I don't know, knot up the machine or something. Because my luck, that would totally happen. So all I'm doing now is just lining it up on those marks that I made, but then also kind of checking to make sure that my checkerboard pattern is lining up at the same time. And like I said, I cut it a little bit bigger so that I had a little wiggle room on the edges to line that up correctly. I actually sewed that one on a little crooked, but I kind of fixed it a little bit just by kind of clipping it, and it didn't make much of a difference in the end. So usually I will actually I measure the first one and then I just kind of eyeball the rest of them, but that's me. I'm not super worried about it being perfect. I'm pretty good at eyeballing things most of the time, so I kind of trust that. But if you are not good at eyeballing, then definitely, even if you need to draw all the way across that piece F there, the yellow piece, if you need to draw those lines all the way across, you can use a pen or anything. Like, it doesn't have to be anything erasable because you're never going to see this. It's all going to be covered up. So go ahead and draw it on there so that you can see what you're doing, and line it up and sew it on. really don't have to clip it down. I usually don't worry about it. I just, you know, line it up on the marks and go. But because I want this to be so specific with the checkerboard pattern, I am clipping it on the side so that I can make sure I'm lining it up correctly. Okay, so now we're going to take piece F2 and line it up along the bottom, and then we are going to, well, I'm actually going to draw a line across the bottom, and that's where you need to stitch. I'm not going to tell you the measurements because, you know, I don't want to share that kind of information. It's all in the pattern. But then we're going to line up the bottom and stitch across that line that I drew. And then we're going to fold it back. And this is actually going to be another pocket. And it's also where we are going to attach our snap for the flap that comes down to cover the card slots so that they don't fall out. now you want to trim off that, just the piece of F2 that's on top there. Do not trim piece F. You want that to stay. So just trim that piece F2, just to reduce the bulk. And then you are going to fold that piece all the way down to the bottom and line that up, and you can see how it creates just another little pocket. And I put my card slots a little too far down, I think. I don't know, the chalk started rubbing away and it just started kind of guessing at it. So I moved mine down just a little bit further. And you're going to top stitch that. So, because like I said, this is going to make you another card slot pocket. Mine will be a little short because I had to fold it down a little bit more. But usually in that pocket, I put like cash. I don't tend to put a card in that pocket. You can if you want, but I don't usually. So you can see how nice and finished it looks now with that. And we're going to mark out now where we're going to put the snap. And I'm using plastic can snaps. That is what the pattern recommends. You could also use metal snaps if you want, those spring-loaded ones. Whatever you fancy. But the plastic cam snaps work pretty good here. And I am just marking that off screen because, again, I don't want to give measurements out. And a lot of times I will eyeball this instead of, like I'm doing right here, instead of using the ruler or anything, or the measurements that are given. And I also like to wait until the very end to do the snap for the flap, because I like to construct the entire bag and then kind of fold it to see where it needs to go. Because if you try to do it now, sometimes it can distort a little bit as you're putting the whole thing together, and then it might be a little too short. So I like to get everything where it's supposed to be first and then mark my flap. So right now I have the rivet press, the double cap rivet dies on there, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish off that little strap like I mentioned in the beginning. And I'm going to switch out the dies for my cam snap dies. And I'm using a 20mm or size 20 cam snap. Sorry, I know you can't really see a whole lot of what's going on here, but there are technically 4 pieces to the cam snap dies, but the bottom 2 are the same, so I just leave the same one in there, and that's the part that's going to have the dome. That's your bottom part, and then the other 2 dies are going to be the male and female ends, which you would use a female die for the male end because it will actually snap up into it. That's how I like to press it in to make sure I know that I have the right die on there. I like to press it in. And so right now we're putting, I think it's the stud, I think is what it's called, which is the male part. It has the protrusion on it. So I'm just snapping that into place, and then I have a small little scrap of Decoville Heavy, and I'm just going to put the cap part through there with the Decoville Heavy in between that and the vinyl, and then just press it on. Now, you do want to make sure that you're only cutting through one layer of the vinyl here. I have in the past messed up and cut through the folded piece there, and that's not what you want to do because you don't really want that cap on your pocket there. So see, it's nice and flat there. So just make sure that before you sew up the sides or anything, you do this part so that you can just do it through the one layer of vinyl. And you do want to put the Decaville Heavy or, you know, some kind of Peltex or something like that through to really stabilize it, so that the cap doesn't just like rip through, because there's a lot of pressure on your cam snaps, you know, when you're buckling it or snapping it together and pulling it apart. So you want to make sure that you're kind of reinforcing that hole so it doesn't just rip through that vinyl. So here I'm just making sure that I like the placement of everything, that all of my little boxes line up, and I am going to just sew down the sides. Now I like to start from the bottom and work my way up so that I'm not dragging any of those edges down. If anything, they're going to be dragging up further towards the top and flattening out more. So yeah, I like to start from the bottom on both sides. So I won't turn and pivot and go down the other side. I will actually, you know, cut the thread and move it over to the other side. And now you will notice me here, that little knob on this machine is the tension. So what I'm doing is I start with my kind of, you know, low tension, and then as I get thicker and thicker, I increase my tension, and then once I get towards the top, I'm backing it off again so that I have nice clean stitches all the way through all of those layers. If I tried to do that with just the same tension throughout the whole thing, either I would have a rat's nest on the back from all of the bobbin thread getting all messed up, or the top would look crazy. So just adjusting that tension as you're sewing, it made a world of difference, and I think it looked really nice. The stitching looked great even whenever I did top stitching on this section. I did the same thing, and it worked really well. So I just kind of give it one turn, and then go a few stitches, give it another turn, go a few stitches, and then kind of once I start getting through the bulk of it, I start kind of backing back down. So it's like going up a hill and then coming back down. And there you can see just that tiny little bit of overhang that I have, because like I said, for the card slot pieces, I cut them a little bit wider so I had some wiggle room to be able to line that up. And you can see how thick this is, so that's why I'm saying if you are using a domestic machine, don't use waterproof canvas for them, because that would be way too thick, I believe. And that's just my opinion. I mean, you know, if you want to try it, go for it. And if you're able to do that, then you are definitely better than me at that. Because my machine would laugh at me if I tried to put that through there. Okay, so these are the side pieces. This is just kind of creating the rest of the card slot panel. And it's just a couple little strips. You can get really fun with this part. You can do different colors, and you know, but I just like everything to match up. So these are also good. That bottom piece that we put the snap into is a perfect place to put like a really cool character placement if you wanted to fussy cut. The pattern actually gives you placement for a fussy cut if you wanted to do that. It shows you where to put your character if you wanted to do that, to have it show, because you don't want to put it at the top because that's going to fold over and be on the back. So you'll want it at the bottom so that you actually get to see that cool character. So I'm just going to sew down the sides of those, and again I'm going to do the tension thing just because there's so many layers. So same deal, just kind of go a little bit, give it a turn, go a little bit, give it a turn. I'm just checking there to make sure that my stitches look good. And they do, so. And I am going really slow here. You don't like you can see I was having a little bit of trouble getting that clip off because it is like maxed out. So. Now just press those, that seam open really well. You want the seam allowance to go towards the skinny little pieces and top stitch that down. Same as before, adjust your tension as you go if you're doing the same thing I'm doing with the thick waterproof canvas. Love how this looks. It gives it such a nice finished look. Probably should have done the testing here before I sewed everything together, but I didn't. But luckily everything worked. So you can see that one is just a little bit short, that pocket, but like I said earlier, excuse my dog sneezing, but like I said earlier, that I usually don't put a card in that pocket. I usually put like, you know, a receipt or some cash or something like that. Alright, so now we're going to take the lining for this piece. We're just going to align that up because this part is actually going to be like a little kind of slip pocket on the outside. We're going to put a little cam snap so that it attaches to the main body of the bag. So you can put, again, you can put receipts, anything like that in there. It's a great little pocket. I actually put my phone in it. That's what I like to put there, but fold that over, and then you're going to top stitch across the top of there. Create the top edge of your slip pocket. Like I said, we're going to put another snap in, and this one is only going to go onto the lining of your slip pocket here. So you're just going to mark it where the pattern says. I actually marked it incorrectly here and then decided I didn't like that and then moved it to a different spot. But if you follow what the directions say, you'll get it right the first time. I just didn't want to, I guess. I was just going rogue. So my dot was actually on the black and it was really, really hard to see. So I just took my my chalk marker or chalk pen. I don't know what they're called. Marker. Anyways, so I'm using my hole punch again just to punch that through. And we're going to do the same process we did on the card slot pocket. I am going to use some Decaville Heavy, and I am going to use the stud end and push the cap through the Decaville Heavy, then through the lining slip pocket, and then put that stud piece on top. Oh, and since that decided to roll away, all of my wood bowls and tools that I have shown here are actually made by a very good friend of mine. It's actually my best friend's husband. He does woodworking and he turns all of this gorgeous wood on a lathe. And he does have a website, or he sells his goods through Facebook. So I will link his Facebook page down below so you can go check out all of his awesome stuff. He makes, I have 2 seam rippers, a seam ripper stiletto combo. I have some purse holder open-y things so that you can take pictures of the inside in different sizes, and then of course my bowls and cups that I have here. He makes everything, and it's gorgeous. So definitely go to the description box and find that link and check him out because his work is amazing. Okay, so now I'm just clipping that piece down so that I can trim the edges because the card slot was square. The edges were squared off. So you want to round those corners off and just match it to your lining. So now we need our main bag piece back that I had stored up top. And this is where we're going to put the other, what is the other end called? The stud and the, I don't know. It'll come to me probably, you know, in the middle of the night. Anyways, so what I'm going to do is line it up where it needs to go along the bottom edges there, and then I'm going to press that into the vinyl. And you probably can't see it very well on the camera, but there is an impression from the stud part of the cam snap. So that lets me know exactly where I need to put the other part. So I'm just going to punch that hole and repeat the whole process again, but with the female part of the cam snap, whatever that's called, because I can't remember. I was having a hard time getting it to stick to that top piece, so I ended up just having to set it on there. I don't know, I was just on the struggle bus. It was also pretty late when I was recording this, so that's probably why I was struggling so hard. It's on there, and now we can actually snap those two together. Oh yeah, something from my machine, I think, left some, like, I don't know, maybe like grease marks or something on the vinyl, but that's what the sleeve's for. Now all snapped in, and And that's me realizing I forgot to cut that off. So I'm just gonna cut that off and melt it up with the lighter. And now we can snap it together. And your little slip pocket is done. So you just need to baste that on. Just lining everything up, making sure everything's good to go. And sometimes it'll be a little short. The lining will be a little, not the lining, the piece that you're snapping your card slot pocket onto, because the lining is pulled out of the way right here. Can be a little bit shorter, but that's probably because you didn't do your seam allowance exactly right or whatever. It's fine, just trim it off. It's not going to mess up the whole thing. I think that's one of the biggest lessons in sewing, is that we aren't perfect. Things will not line up perfectly every time, but it's okay. Just keep going. Even if you're struggling, just keep going and finish the bag. You'll be glad you did in the end. Brave there for a minute and decided to really go fast. One of these days I'll get as fast as Lauren in her speed demon ways. I'm not quite there yet. My machine still scares me. Alright, we are almost there. We just need to make the flap and attach it and then sew it all together. It's so cute. I love it so much. Okay, so put that piece to the side and we're going to work on the flap. So grab that clear plastic that we bound in the beginning, and you're going to line that up on the underside of the flap. So when this opens up on your bag, this part will show, the underneath of the flap. And this is going to be an ID pocket, or just, you know, whatever you want to use it for, but it's perfect for an ID, so you don't have to take it out because it's clear. So we're just going to baste down the sides and then stitch across the bottom, and I like to kind of line it up so that it almost looks like top stitching on the other edge, just to make it look aesthetically pleasing. But you don't want to sew the top edge. So the edge that's on the rounded part of your flap, do not sew that, because that's where you're going to insert your ID or whatever. So you leave that part completely open. So see, that's completely open there so that you can put your card in. Now you're going to sandwich the right sides together of the outside flat piece and the inside flat piece. And you're going to pin that together, or clip it together. And then sew around all of the sides except for that top flap, because you're going to need to turn this out through that hole. And when you're using vinyl for this, especially, I mean, of course you have to use a clear vinyl, but especially when you're using vinyl for the outer parts as well. I find it helpful to take it to the iron and steam it up, or even if you just want to use like a hair dryer or something to really get the vinyl warm. I just use a whole lot of steam and just really soften up that vinyl. And another thing is that I fused my Decaville to my vinyl. In the pattern, it actually suggests waiting to insert your Decaville or Peltex after you flip it, which does make it a lot easier, but I didn't do that. I just got ahead of myself and went ahead and ironed it on while I was prepping everything, but it works. It does kind of separate a little because when you're turning it through, it doesn't, you know, the glue didn't attach perfectly, and it does make it a little harder to turn it out, but it works, so it's up to you how you do that. I do like the method of inserting it later, just to avoid kind of that extra drama. The pattern recommends, and I do too, that you do a second row of stitching just kind of like a hair away from your first in the seam allowance. This is going to help when you turn it, your stitches not show as bad. With vinyl, how thick it is, sometimes you can get your stitches pulling apart at the seams. Not that it's losing its integrity or anything, it's just you see those stitches because there's so much pressure on them. So doing that second row of stitching really helps kind of keep that a bit neater, so you don't see your stitches as much in the final product. So I'm actually going to trim all of the curved edge with my pinking shears, just to kind of help reduce bulk and get that curve really nice when you turn it out. Okay, so I went to the iron and softened up that vinyl, and now I'm just going to turn it. I like to kind of try to get a corner and push and you just gotta go for it. It's thick and it's kind of hard to push because there's so much vinyl there, but it'll work. And I use one of my little tools that my friend made me. This one is my favorite. It looks like a little honey spoon thing, but it works so well at poking out corners and things without any fear of busting through a seam because there's no sharp edges. So just keep at it and eventually you'll get it through there. Alright, so I'm just using that little tool, whatever you use, to flatten out your seams, and it's just rounding that out. Now I'm going to go back to the iron and use steam and warm it back up so that I can flatten that out a bit. And all that vinyl, you can see, look, it's just perfect now. So all the wrinkles that were in that clear vinyl, and it looked just horrible after doing that birthing there, it works perfect now. So you can see I'm kind of demonstrating how it will look. So now we're just going to attach that up on the top, and like I said, a while back in the beginning. I'm not going to put the other part of the snap on yet because I want to sew that down first. I want to sew everything together and then do that part last. That does mean that you will see the cap of your snap on the flap here. So if that's not something you want to see, then you're going to want to do that before you sew the flap together. So as you're doing that clear pocket, that's when you would want to install your camp snap. But I like for it to be on the outside for stability. When you're kind of ripping that flap up to get to your cards, going through both layers of that top flap, I think it's going to last longer if you do it that way. So I've clipped that on. Now I'm taking that D-ring that we made earlier and just nesting that right into the side there. And we're just going to baste this on for right now because it'll get sewn on better in the next step. Something was up with my bobbin, I think, here. So I'm just pulling out some of that and just fixing that. I don't know if you can notice, but I'm like paranoid that I forgot to hit record or that it stopped recording, so I get up every once in a while just to check, to stand up and see if the video is still recording, because I do not want to finish the bag and realize that it was not recording, just like last time. So. And when you're doing that, just make sure that your lining fabric is pulled out of the way. You only want to be attaching this to your front panel. Alright, so see, no, I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to do it after. I was going to say I was about to put the snap on, but I do that in the end. So I'm just unzipping that one. We're not birthing it through that pocket or anything, but I do unzip that just to get the zipper tab out of the way. And I'm hoping that this shows really well. Yeah, so I like to kind of fold that tab and then pinch together. And so we're matching up the two outside pieces and the two inside pieces. So I'm just going around, and I like to get that side matched up and then do this side. So, and don't forget to unzip your zipper, your main zipper. You want that at least like 1/2 to 3/4 unzipped. So, because that is how you birth the bag. So, just match up your two outer pieces. I like to start with the outside because the lining isn't as important as the outer pieces. You can see one of my sides is a little bit longer. That's okay. I'm just going to trim it. It's probably not actually any longer, it's just that the bulk of the card slot pockets tends to make it seem a little shorter. So, and right there I was just making sure that I leave a nice big opening to turn through. And if I don't actually like draw it on, I will totally forget and just sew the whole thing together. So I just take my friction pin and mark right on the edge. And I did it as far towards that curve as I could, because with all this vinyl, it's going to be a beast to turn. So I definitely want to give myself the biggest opening that I can, so that I don't have to like rip it open later. So, or risk ripping my fabric in any way. So I am actually going to turn it and come down that part right there, and then turn and start doing it, doing my stitches. Now you want to have a larger seam allowance on your lining, and that just ensures that your lining sits nicely inside there and it's not baggy. So what I do is just do a pretty good sized seam allowance, and then when I get closer to the top, the middle section there where the top actually starts, the outer pieces start, I kind of zigzag in. No, not zigzag. Well, you'll see what I do. I don't know how to explain it. I'm new at this, okay? So see, I can kind of angle. I start to angle in so that my seam allowance in this area is quite small. And I am increasing my tension here because obviously the lining is just 2 pieces of waterproof canvas, but once I get to this, it's a lot of layers. And I actually, my machine kind of chewed up a little bit of the backing of my waterproof canvas. Luckily it didn't go all the way through, but that's something you definitely want to worry about or watch out for. I really could have benefited from using a hump jumper here, but I didn't know where mine was, and I didn't want to find it because it was late and I just wanted to finish the back. So don't be like me. Use the proper tools, and you'll have better results in the end. We're just gonna go all the way around. My edges of my bag kept catching on my mat there, so that's why I kind of folded it up. You don't need to do that. There's nothing special about that. It was just annoying me, so I folded it. So here, again, a hump jumper really would have been helpful, but what I'm doing is I'm hand cranking it because I don't want it to skip stitches, and it did anyways, but if you go slow and hand crank it, a lot of times you can avoid those skip stitches. But what I'm going to do is just go flip the bag around once I make it all the way around, and I will go up towards the thickness, and then that will actually close off that area where it the jump stitch happened. Skip stitch? Jump stitch? I don't know. yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna work my way up that hill instead of down it, and that usually your machine will like going up the hill more than it will down. So that's something to watch out for if you don't have the hump jumper, or you just don't want to take the time to do that, to have a different tool or anything like that. Usually if you go up to the thick part, you'll have decent results. And I'm just checking all my stitches before I think about turning it. And I do clip the corners of the vinyl. That's and it's pretty thick there, so I like to have nice corners, and with all that thickness it would just be like a little wonky. So I am clipping those, and then I do trim down the lining just because it's such a large seam allowance, and it just gets it out of the way and gives it a nice flush finish on the inside. You can see just how, you know, thick of a seam allowance I took here, and I probably could have even gone a little bit bigger, but it does fit nicely inside, so I'm okay with that. It's just so you don't have a baggy lining that is like all sloppy and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you like a baggy lining, then that's good, but I like mine to fit a little tighter. Now for the fun part. And once again, you could totally go warm this up with an iron. I didn't do that here, and most of it seems to be off screen. Sorry about that. So what I like to do is just kind of like pick a corner and start punching at it. If you have nails like I do, be very careful with this part, because you can easily put too much pressure on your nails. So definitely, you know, use some kind of pusher tool like the one I have, or use your knuckles to really force it down in there. And yeah, you're gonna get wrinkles, but you know, that's what steaming is for afterwards. So just get it in there, through there any way you can. And it's really kind of funny when you're watching it back. It's really helpful if you can get that lining down over the outside of your bag. It makes it so much easier. So just kind of keep trying to work it through, work it over, but also be gentle. I mean, you don't want to rip. You spent all this time on your bag. You don't want to rip it. So just be gentle. Make sure your zippers are okay. You're not stressing that out, because if you rip a zipper at this point, you're gonna cry. So you see how I got that lining down over most of it, and then that just makes it easier to kind of like start getting it through. It's almost like a pressure reliever. Just keep gently pulling. It's probably a good thing I didn't leave the sound on here, because there's probably lots of curse words happening right now. There usually is. Alright, so I got most of it through now, and now I just need to poke out those corners. So you can kind of see what I was talking about earlier. There's that tiny little hole that I can just barely get my nail into to kind of fluff it out. So, like I said, nothing is going to fall out of your bag. through that hole. I'll take my little tool and just press out my corners. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite tools in my arsenal. And if you are using, you know, like that purple thing or any other kind of turning tool that helps you poke out the corners, be very careful when you're doing that, because you can easily go through your seam and rip it, or you can go through your fabric even, because some of those are really pointy. So just go all the way around, work your edges. I like to roll the vinyl back and forth to try to kind of get it to sit down in there right. Make sure you poke out your lining corners, and then we're gonna stitch across the top, and your bag is all sewn together. The only thing you have to do now is put your snap on. And I like to put a little tag in here. I think I put one that was like, that said, "You look great," or something like that. One of Lauren Mormino's tags. I just love her stuff, as you can tell. I mean, I'm wearing the Sew Whatever long sleeve shirt. I have her clips. I have her vinyl. Well, this isn't her vinyl, but the one I made, the previous one I made was her vinyl. But her rulers, everything. You look amazing is what it says. Another place you can put your tag, and is actually one that is recommended in the pattern, is inside the slip pocket. So like before you sew down the sides of your slip pocket, you can just put the little tag on there, and whenever you open up your little snap for the slip pocket, you can see the little tag. And I'm just trying to take the smallest seam allowance I can in order to close up that bag, or that pocket. You can hand stitch this. I know a lot of people do like the hidden stitching to make it does look fantastic, but I just don't have the patience to do that. So I try to make it look as nice as possible, and just take the smallest seam allowance that will close up that hole, but also leave it looking good. So just shove that back inside, and make sure you poke your corners all the way through down into the bottom. That's going to really help give you a really nice finish on the inside. And sometimes it can be kind of hard, especially when you take that opening through the whole bottom. It can be kind of hard to poke those corners out, so just keep working with it. If you need to take your tool and kind of push it in, you can do that too, but just make sure you really finish the inside, poke it through. Alright, we're finished with that. We just need to install the little snap. That's the pocket I was talking about. If you wanted to add a tag in there, you could add it in there. And as you can see, it looks a little wonky. There's some wrinkles, but it just needs a good press and also use. The vinyl is really stiff when you first sew it. You know, especially if you use like a thicker vinyl. A lot of the printed vinyls are kind of on the thicker side, but just your customer using it will help that vinyl relax, and it'll look amazing. So I did that same trick again. I pressed the flap down onto the snap so I could see exactly where it needed to go. On this one, you do not want to put any decaville because it will show on both sides. But you don't need it because you have that decaville heavy on the inside of your flap already, and you're going through 2 layers of vinyl. So you don't need an extra stabilizer there. And I'm using clear snaps. You probably already noticed that because it's the end of the video. But if you're worried about seeing your the cap, get a clear one. They look great, I think. It blends right in. You can't even tell. Alright, and we're gonna add on our strap, and she's done. Thank you guys for hanging out with me if you made it this far. Let me know what you think down below. If you have any suggestions, just let me know. Be nice about it though. This is my first sewing tutorial. Alright, thanks for watching guys. Bye. See you on the next one.